Listeners, welcome again. We're here still at the Transport and Logistics Show in Munich, and we've got our very last podcast of the day, and we're lucky enough, it's a podcast veteran, someone who's experienced a podcast before. So we've got him on, and we're looking forward to it. Now, this young man, this rugged young man, he's a little cross between Van Diesel, Jason Statham, and The Rock. Everybody can't take their eyes off him when he's on stage. And he's a great character, really good speaker, good fun, and one of the best people in the industry that I've met. So, welcome, Sebastiaan Scholte, CEO of Jan de Rijk, and he's also chairman of TIACA. Really pleased to have you on board.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure.
Good man. Now, we always start with, why did you agree or why did you come on the podcast?
Well, first of all, I know you for many years, and I know how you conduct interviews and how you have the exhibitions and the conferences when you speak. So I thought it was going to be fun. And it's always fun talking to you. So
very good. Let's hope so. Now we're under a bit of pressure between us, huh? And we will be coming to a little moment where you were speaking at the Rotterdam Students event, and you made a little bit of a faux pas on the topic of leadership. So we'll come to that a little bit later on.
Sure.
And but first of all, now, can you tell us a little bit, how did you get into the industry?
Ooh, it's a long story. It's like a lot of stories. It starts, I'm being a man that started with a woman.
That's hard to believe.
I know. I was traveling in China in 91, and I met a beautiful Mexican lady. And I thought, I want to go and visit Mexico. So I visited Mexico. Didn't work out with the lady. She was Miss Mexico even, so she was really...
She was Miss Mexico?
Yeah, she was a beautiful lady. But so it didn't work out, but I fell in love with the country. So I said, I want to go there more often. So I did my internship there. And then after my internship, when I graduated, I said I would like to work in Mexico, because I think instead of doing something in the Netherlands where everything works out very well, right? I wanted to make a difference. So in Mexico, there's still a lot of things that you can improve. And you can immediately see your efforts, right? And the rewards on that. So I went to Mexico without a job, and I ended up in Aeromexico. And that's how I started.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to how you got a hold of a Miss Mexico.
Yeah, I've probably she was blind, She had the wrong glasses
so
on.
How old were you then?
I was from 1970, so I was about 20, 21. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then you got into Aeromexico. Anybody?
No, but when I met her, of course, right? When I started in Aeromexico, it was called Aeroexpress then. It's Aeromexico and Mexicana and Aeropro.
Mexico, yeah.
It was in 97, so I was about 26 years.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
And did anybody take you under their wing, mentor you, coach you, give you a helping hand?
No, not really. In 5 years, I had 4 CEOs there. And I had one very good CEO. I think you know him as well. And
you can name him because
Jan Albrecht. He's now,
we have a Hall of Fame. Jan's in Saudi.
Yeah, he's now in Saudi. And what I really appreciated for him is he really stood for his people, right? So I had a couple of projects when we started the freighter, for example. I was quite young. I said, listen, we have a freighter between Mexico and Miami with fish and etc. And he said, is this going to work? I said, yeah, it's going to work. So, okay, I signed it. And we made it profitable. And a couple of other situations where he really backed me up, which I think big leaders do, right? They back you up. And they stand for the people. So.
They do. And that's also something, one of the things that we're hoping is that the podcast will be listened to by people who might be considering coming into the business, or people who are in the business and then want to see what types of characters and leaders are there. Because everybody says it's not sexy enough and we don't know enough about it. So it's our responsibilities really to try and make people, want to stay and come into the business.
The other advantage maybe to answer your question about not having a mentor, because if you go in a certain, if you have a mentor and you have a very well-organized company, you become like that company, right? And you become like a well-oiled machine. But sometimes it's also good in learning how not to do things. So at least you have the
bit of a
freedom.
Disruptor.
Exactly. So at least what not to do. So you still have the freedom to think how you should do it yourself. And
that's
and
a
you
good
develop
point.
yourself. Anyway, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And then when you got in there and you were there, what made you decide this is the business for me? This is the industry I want to remain in?
Well, first of all, I really had no clue. I had no clue what it was. I thought it was, I knew the express carriers. I never really knew what was happening, how the whole air cargo supply chain was working, right? And so I learned that very quickly. And what I loved is that actually I grew quite exponentially there with a career. I started there just being a liaison between Europe and Mexico.
Yep.
Then I became VP of Europe after 1.5 years, so I was 29 years. Then 2 years later, or even less than 2 years later, they asked me to become VP Commercial. So I was not even 30. So that's okay.
Done well, huh?
Of course, but that's nice, right? So then you stay. And what I love about this industry and what I liked about it at that time as well, is because it's very global.
Yep.
And whatever happens in air cargo, better said, whatever you see and you read in the news today happened yesterday in air cargo, right? And so we see a lot of geopolitical events. It's a worldwide event. That's why it should attract young people, because you're part of a global thing, right?
Yeah, and you're right, because there's so many doors that can open, but if people aren't prepared to see what's on the other side, it's such a waste, huh?
Yeah, no, sure.
No, I can see what you're saying. Now, then you moved on.
Yeah, I moved on. I went to Cargolux afterwards. Yeah.
Yep. And why?
Well, like I said, it was 5 years and 4 CEOs, and then there's a lot of changes. And to be honest, when Jan left here, there was a CEO. He was the director of operations, and since I was responsible for sales, operations and sales naturally they don't get on that way. Yeah. So I thought, now it's time to do something else. And then I had a very good relationship with Cargolux already before. And I really admired Cargolux at that time, and it's a beautiful company.
Yeah, and they won an award.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
they won an award. Yeah, and so they had a vacancy at Latin America. So the regional VP for Latin America, and that was a great opportunity. So I moved from Mexico to Sao Paulo, and then they had the office in Buenos Aires. So we closed that, and then we moved it to Brazil. And 1 year I commuted between Mexico because my wife is Mexican. My daughter was born in Madrid actually, and she's better.
I've met her, yeah, lovely girl, yeah.
So that's one of the things that if I look back and I say, okay, I made up hopefully afterwards, but being a year traveling and only seeing your family every 3 weeks, 3 days, it's quite difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're used in your own, and then you all of a sudden see each other. You have to get used to each other, and then finally you get used to each other. Then you have to leave it.
Yeah.
So, but then they finally moved with me to Brazil.
And how long have you been married now?
21 years old. Yeah, 20 years. Yeah.
Okay, good
long
man.
time,
In for the long haul, eh?
Yeah.
But you still travel a lot, don't you?
Yeah, but less than I used to do. But yeah.
Because so many people we've spoken to, they travel so much. And they've been married quite long, which is also admirable. But it's because the years aren't actually real years, because they spend so much time apart.
So, but they make best use of the time, the short time that you spend together.
Yeah,
so
and you always look forward to seeing your wife when you go home.
Yeah,
no, it's good.
Yeah, if I don't travel a lot, my wife says, shouldn't you
be on your way again?
Yeah,
now?
exactly.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Now, another thing I want to ask you, when you look back, or what you've achieved, and obviously we'll get to Jan de Rijk a little bit later on. All good leaders, and the fact that your daughter wanted you to be put in front of all the students as a leader, all good leaders have made mistakes. Yep. All of them.
Yeah.
The best ones are the ones who learn from those mistakes and are not frightened of making more mistakes. Yeah. What would you say have been the biggest, either mistake learning or the mistake looking back now that really changed things and made you a much, much better leader?
That's a very good question. I think one of the things I underestimate always is and it's a mistake that I make less now, but sometimes I still make it, is that I think that people will think as I think. And that's not always true. And even if you transmit the message, you have a vision, you say, guys, this is where we have to go, and you repeat it a couple of times, it's still not sure that everybody is on the same page. Yeah. So you have to repeat it. You have to engage people. You have to. I think that's one of the challenges of our industry as well, right? Because I think one of the most difficult parts of my job is finding the right people and keeping the right people.
Yes, and now that's an interesting thing. When you find the right people, and you said the words keep them.
Yeah.
And I know you now, so for you, keeping them is developing them, pushing them forward. It's not keeping them to yourself, so you protect your own position. Yeah. You're always pushing people forward.
Yeah.
Now, do you see that everywhere? And even with managers who work for you? Because there's so many good people, youngsters. And one of the things we were talking about earlier, we're not seeing enough ladies and females.
No.
And the ones that we do see, they're absolutely incredible, fantastic.
Yeah.
So how do you push and make everybody try and be confident that if they've got a real good star, push them?
No, what I do a lot is I go through the organization, I talk to people, and you go to certain sites, and then you talk to people, not necessarily the people who report to you, right? And then that's how you basically scout talent. I mean, I've 2-3 occasions that I've seen people, I think, why are you here? You could do so much more, right? And then the reason they are there is because they're doing an excellent job, right? And I understand the manager as well, because he or she doesn't want to
disrupt what they're doing.
Because then what do you do with how do you fill that gap in, right? But then this person, unfortunately, is the victim of his own her own success. So that's when you sometimes have to pull it out, and you have to engage the manager with that as well and try to convince him or her. And well, that's nice. And it's nice to see people grow. It's nice.
It's lovely, isn't it?
And what you say about like sponsoring or coaching, I think a real good coach, and that's difficult, but a real good coach should also tell a young individual, saying, you know what, maybe 1 or 2 years more in this company, but then look somewhere outside.
Yeah.
You should be independent. If you're a coach, you should be independent.
Yes.
And not only think in the interest of the company, but really in the interest of the individual.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, and sometimes, well, many times, better to work for a good manager than a great company. And if things aren't going well, and you don't want them to waste a few years, sometimes you're right. It's good to say.
And you're saying a good manager, because another big mistake some companies make, and including our company, we made it as well. If somebody's really good in his or her job, you say, you know what, I want to promote you. You're going to become a manager. But people who have certain skills are not necessarily the ones with the right managerial skills, right? Yep. And then you lose somebody with very important skills, but he doesn't or she doesn't feel uncomfortable. And
and it's a funny thing saying that, because I was talking to a lot of people, and sometimes some of those people, it's the worst thing in the world to be promoted. Yeah. Because they go home, tell the wife, she's fantastic, and so proud of them. And she tells the in-laws, the neighbours, all the friends. And then the kids are saying, oh, we get a new television, better car, we move house. Everything starts just going boom, 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 boom. Then all of a sudden it's coming to the last weekend before they start the new job. The friends aren't talking to them the same way because they're not acting the same way. And then when you walk into the office and it's brand fresh, nobody's there to tell you what to do. And then they go back doing what they were doing before.
Well, that's what you see, because people are getting in their comfort zones, and then people are very good with certain skills. What they do is they don't manage, they don't delegate. They're doing their job. They're like super specialist, right? And that's a challenge for a lot of companies. Yeah.
And so now we get onto Jan de Rijk. Okay, so obviously you've had, how many years you've been there?
9. Yeah.
And for anybody who doesn't know, you're about to move on, so you've decided to move on. 9 years.
It's a long time.
Good investment, huh?
No, sure, and we're great years, and still are good weeks.
Yeah. Very good. Now that's a different side of the business, okay? And when we're at conferences, a lot of the trucking guys, they always feel as if they're the poor relative, or they don't get the best shout, or they're not treated correctly in the supply chain. Oh. What's your take on that?
I think it has changed. It has changed a little bit. I think the RFS players have a bigger role now. Also through certain organizations like TIACA and IATA. I mean, they take the whole air cargo supply chain a lot more seriously. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, sometimes people underestimate the role of a road footing service or a handling agent, right? And most of the time, the cargo physically stays more time on board of a truck or in the warehouse than an airplane.
Which is incredible, isn't it? Now, the role with TIACA, that obviously put a different dimension on the business, and you're representing a bigger group. How what was the nicest things that you found, or most rewarding with regard to that role?
Now, the most rewarding thing is, and that's why I did it, is that you can make a difference for the industry. Yeah. I mean, at TIACA, you're a chairman, you have to sometimes put in 20 hours a week, right? You don't get paid anything. All the travel is from your own pocket, but you do it for a greater good. for the industry. So to be able to change the industry.
I'm welling up now. You're such a great. Hey,
you're starting to cry already.
Yeah, for the greater good.
Yeah.
Go on, let's carry on now.
No, but I mean that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, if you can really make an impact and make a difference, and that's the most rewarding thing.
And it is rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
People say, why do you not give up? Why do you want to keep participating? But it's good, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and now you're stepping down from that role as well, yeah?
Well, I have to. I had to step down anyway in November. It's a 2-year tenure, right? So then you hand over to the vice chairman. It's an unwritten rule. But the fact that I'm leaving Jan de Rijk, which is a trustee member, and I'm no longer part of the trustee member, so it means that I no longer can be part of the board. But we leave it in very good hands because the organization is very financially healthy.
Yeah.
Great board, new board members as well. Great new concepts we're working on, and with Steven Polmans, he's now the vice chairman, but will become the chairman. I think it's in excellent hands.
Yeah, no, he's a good lad.
Yep.
He's a good fella.
Yep.
Now, you say in some of the initiatives, you've got one now which is to do with customer experience or customer service. Do you want to elaborate a bit on that?
What do you mean with
the reference to how well somebody's done and the quality?
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, the CSQ.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what we started, actually, this is where everything starts with a vision, right? So we say, okay, we want to improve this industry, and you know it. I mean, we have talked so much, many times about how we are different players and we interact, but we all are sub-optimizing our own little role, and therefore not the whole air cargo supply chain, right? So we want, and we have to have more visibility.
Yep.
We have to be open. I mean, if you're not open, it's a weakness.
Yes.
To be open also about your mistakes, that's strength, right?
Yep.
So what we developed, and this is where the vision came, and then we developed it, we say, okay, we want to become like a sort of a trip advisor for the air cargo industry. So certain airport communities, handling agents, etc. How are you rated? How well are you doing? Right?
Yep.
And that's what we call the cargo service quality. And now we started with certain airport communities, and the forwarders are basically rating the handling agents and
according to certain criteria.
To certain criteria on services, infrastructure, etc. And what we're trying to achieve here is that you improve where you have gaps, right? So and that there's an openness as well. So a lot of shippers especially are complaining because I have no idea where my cargo is. I have no idea what facilities there are. Yep. If I'm a pharmaceutical company, where do I really have good cool facilities? How are they rated, etc.
And the choices, So but it also complements what IATA are doing with the Smart Facility Program.
Yeah.
And again, more transparency, because the shippers should be taking interest in upstream choices instead of leaving it to the parties that are represented.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So and how is it? Is it successful? Are you happy?
Well, it's quite successful. Yeah. More and more airport communities are signing up, and it's now it's a roller coaster. Now it's going faster and faster. We have a wonderful event in November in Budapest, Executive Summit, where we will also have we'll discuss this topic and we will discuss progress.
What dates is that in November?
Somewhere I don't know. 20 November, something. I don't know by heart, but
Budapest, lovely place. Now, how do you spend? And I know, but I know some of the things that you do in your spare time. But I'm always in awe, and I love your picture on the WhatsApp. I've shown it to so many people. Explain what you do now, as like to wind down, to have a bit of fun.
I do a lot of yoga.
What, down dog and down dolphin?
Chess. I play a lot of chess. No. I all the opposite. No, windsurf,
I can just see you with a yogi.
Yeah. Windsurfing, surfing, all the radical things. Yeah.
But you're good at it.
No, but not really. But I love it. So I go into the sea and
some of those pictures.
Yeah. No, but
they're incredible, man.
No, it's nice. But you know what's nice about it? It's you free your mind, right? I mean, you do crazy stuff, and it's just wonderful. I also like to run, and otherwise, otherwise you have so much frustration, and you prop it up. Now instead of punching somebody in the face, I just kill a wave.
Just kill a wave.
Yeah.
Did you play many sports when you were?
No, I always windsurfed. Yeah, I always windsurfed. I started when they invented the sport. Almost, I immediately got hooked up to it.
Yeah.
And but then there's a lot of teenagers and the young years. I wasn't into a lot of sports. I was more going out. But then, so in the 30s, I was picking up running and doing more of the cardio. Yeah.
And you're obviously a skateboarder or a snowboarder.
No, I don't. No, I like the warm weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You don't ski?
No, I don't ski. No, never. No.
Yeah, very.
The only time I skied was on an artificial track in Brazil.
Okay, that went down well, did it?
No, it didn't. I almost broke my my neck. So no. Not for me.
What about the leadership speech that you gave care of your daughter?
Yeah, no, it was very nice. My daughter said, you know what, we have a group of international students. Actually, it's like an organization.
Yep.
In Rotterdam, in the Rotterdam Business School, and they had the last meeting, and it was because they read my curriculum, and so I had 1 week of. So that was I had something at Harvard, so I went to Harvard, but it was only a week on leader. It was a fantastic course. But now all of a sudden they blew it out of proportion, right? So they said what they don't teach at Harvard, right, about leadership. What they actually wanted to know is, hey guys, we learn so much theory. What is really the practice? So I started off as well because my family was in there. Also, I invited them. There were like 400 students there, and my family, and they heard some people saying, yeah. This guy at Harvard is the only. I looked at his LinkedIn profile. It's only a week. It's it's a little bit. So I started with that because it's not about that. But
and be open as well and make a bit of fun about it.
No, sure. No, but what is nothing more rewarding than somehow inspire people, young people that are have a eagerness to learn, right? And at the end of the speech, I got so many questions, and afterwards as well, and they wanted advice on their career, etc., etc., etc. And if even one person, that's how I ended the speech. I said, I do this from an altruistic point of view. I have no interest whatsoever. Even if nobody signs up to work for my company, which of course would also be from a business point of view would be interesting, right? To get young talent.
Definitely, yeah.
I said, but the most important thing for me is if just one of your 400 people in the next 10 years does something based on what I have said and say, I made an impact, that's worthwhile everything, right? I mean, that's why you do it for that. Maybe doesn't happen, but
no, I'm sure it does. But based on that now, some of them, but that's not the story with the.
No, you see a slip up. No. So no, I know. Yeah, it was very strange. Nobody. I do a lot of speeches, and a lot of presentations. So my first slide was on Jan de Rijk, who we are as a company, and I've done that slide maybe 1,000 times, right? So it starts, how many offices, how many people, how many countries, and then we have 100 airports, right? It's like I like to present it, me, just like with pictures and so how many airports? So I said we go to 100 airports. I said we go to 100 Arabs. And I have no idea why I said that because I wasn't even thinking of Middle East or Arabs or whatever.
Very topical, especially where I've been living for the last 5 years.
I know. And then my daughters were laughing their ass off at the back, so it was funny. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe you'll end up in the desert.
Oh, who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe that was the unconscious voice in it. Yeah,
could well be. Yeah. Now, do you read? Do you do any books?
Not enough, actually. I used to read a lot more, but to be honest, you just said it. I do a lot of sports. I work a lot. Being in Jan de Rijk, I have to work. I put a lot of hours. Then in TIACA, I'm an advisory also to two software companies. And then you have your family, which should actually come first, right? I mean, my wife.
I was going to come to that.
Yeah.
Well, if I met her on a night out and you went to the toilet or whatever, and I said, "What would you like to change about Sebastiaan?" What do you think she'd say?
You didn't ask her.
No, I didn't ask her. No.
No, you could have asked her. It's a good question. No, I think what she doesn't like, even if I genuinely try, she wants to make her own decisions. So sometimes I make suggestions, and the fact that I make a suggestion to my, for example, my older daughter who's now going to study, she already feels the pressure and she doesn't like it. Right, so it's.
And what about the wife? What about the missus? What would she say? It must be that she'd like to have more time with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more at home, far. Yeah,
and that's why everybody's been saying it, but so many people say, once you're committed and the hours, it's just part of the game. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast, because everybody says the same thing, and now I can say to my wife, Kathy, look, I'm not the only one who's doing it ridiculously well. Now, biography. What do you think your biography would state? What would be the title? What would you think? Have you got any ideas what it would be? Because one of the things we do as well, when you want to reference this podcast, it'll be on a bookmark, and I'll also come up with a title for you.
Oh, that's a difficult one. I have no idea. I wish, you know, and actually a little bit coming back to my family as well. You want to make an impact, and not an impact because of an ego or whatever, but just that you really were able to change something and inspire people.
Yep.
And I don't know what title it goes over.
But you're pretty confident. Like when people look back and they say, "What sort of memories did you have?" What would you think people would like to remember you for?
Ooh,
because I remember the first time we met.
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of people. I mean, for example, if I'm on my Instagram, most of my Instagram contacts are younger than 20, all young kids, right? Also in the surfing, and I love that. And I love to put a nice picture of surfing and almost get more excitement out of that than making a big results, you know, on a company. So it's not only about results, and it's about. I think the most important thing is that your kids, you know, when I pass away tomorrow, that your kid. They will always say, you know, I am who I am, and I'm thanks to my parents, right? Thanks to my dad, and
yeah.
You know.
But I remember the thing that made me want to spend a bit more time. You got a great sense of humour. Sense of humour.
So have you?
And Irish, they call that somebody who likes to enjoy the crack.
Yeah.
So it's got no other meaning.
No, but you have to have some fun,
yeah,
right? Play hard, work hard.
Yeah, no.
The other order, of course. Work hard,
work hard, play hard. Yeah, need that now. Yeah. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you, I've always wanted to ask you this. When you sit down and you think to yourself, right, I've got all these challenges, all these responsibilities, all this extra time I'm putting in, what is it that makes you think, oof, I'm going to be good at this. I'm going to really want to do it. What is your drive? Something that comes from within. What is it that makes you keep wanting to do this? Because, like you said, 20 hours a week, your own time on top of your own job. You know, what is it that drives you to do these?
Well, it's first of all a sense of responsibility. Once you commit to something, you have to do good. I think, right? Yeah. But it's also the drive to change, the drive to make an impact, the drive to improve things, to really make it better.
And do you think that's how you'll be remembered, as either a disruptor or a man who drove change?
Disruptor, not.
I'm talking about in a positive way now.
No, I know.
I'm
but
not talking about.
I think disruptors are almost always positive, right? I mean, but
now that they understand what the word means.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I don't know. How I would. Yeah, somebody who made an impact. I don't know. Maybe somebody who. Also a nice guy, but you know, once you reach a certain level of responsibility, it's impossible to be a nice guy to everybody.
Exactly.
Or even if you try, there will always be people who don't like you, and it's a fact of life as well.
It's tough.
Yeah. Tough luck.
Yeah. Now, Jan de Rijk and trucking. So now with all the pharmaceutical business and the changes, what do you think has been the biggest change that sort of brought the credibility of trucking and the importance within the supply chain?
First of all, Jan de Rijk, you know, we do a lot more than trucking, right? I mean, we have logistics, we have company trains, we have warehousing, we do last mile distribution to pharmaceuticals, patients, we have even assembly for automotive. So it's a lot broader, which makes it also very interesting. And what you mean to trucking in the air cargo supply chain? Yeah, I think let's put it in this way. We as Jan de Rijk, we are a lot more heard in the industry, in organizations and at conferences and than before. Yes. So
I think the profile has been stepped right up. Yeah. Now the last mile, you spoke about last mile. How much of that do you do?
We don't do last mile on, you know, if you order something through the web shop whatever it is, right? That's a killer competition right there. Yeah. And but what we do is we found a niche, and that's basically last mile in the pharmaceuticals and in patients at home.
Okay, so you're actually doing that. So you're doing hospital to patient, pharmacy to patient, or
exactly. And we, for example, we deliver to kidney dialysis patients at home, And I went a couple of times with one of the drivers, and it's very specific. Yes, it's tough, huh? Because you come to people who are really ill
and depend on you.
And depend on you, of course, yeah. And so and they want to talk as well, because some people
they don't see anyone else.
Yeah.
And how do you train the drivers to deal with that?
Oh, they. I mean, this is much more social. You cannot. Of course, you have to be efficient, because unfortunately, this is a very low margin business, right? Very commoditized. But no, you have to allow them some time at least to be with the people as well, right? And to be social.
Yeah,
it's an important part of the job.
Yeah. And the train mode.
Yeah, train. We started a train. We have now 2 trains between the Netherlands and Italy, and also to Austria, where we have our own company trains. And this is the future, because there's more congestion in the road, driver shortages, CO2, very important. I mean, we take off maybe 65,000 kilometers every week on of the road, right? So that's a lot of CO2 if you do it on a train, and that's becoming more and more important.
That's interesting, though. I mean, most people well, they definitely wouldn't have known that.
No.
About the trains and everything.
Yeah.
And what is that's part of the strategy now and the tactics moving forward?
No, of course we're going to do more and more rail transport. What we also want to do more is how you call it, the contract logistics.
Yeah.
So we recently hired a new contract logistics director, and we really want to give that a boost. That's more the value-added logistics. You're much more locked into the
solutions.
And what we really want to do is, because we have developed a very smart planning system and an algorithm. Oh. So with that, we want to become a control tower and basically digital platform.
Yeah.
And I would say that Jan de Rijk in the next 5 years should be almost more an IT company than an asset-heavy just transport logistics company.
Oh, really?
I think that's where you should go to. There's always a need for assets, right?
Yep.
But the way to differentiate yourself is with digitization, and it works on 2 fronts. One is the customer interaction, and do it in such a way that the ease of business for the customer is so great, and he gets the reporting, etc. So you have more lock-in, right?
Yeah.
And the other part is, of course, the control tower that you have, that you optimize. Because what we're trying to do is, if we would have an insight of all the transport flows in Europe and the available capacity, and our algorithm, artificial, would run over that.
Yep.
And optimizes that, you would have 25% less trucks.
Yep.
So, and it's also on a smaller level. It's the same is true, right? So, and that's what we're trying to optimize. And the other thing of digitization, what I'm trying to say is, just because we have to have operational excellence, so our processes should be much more
much more
efficient.
leaner.
Exactly. Robotization, etc.
Yeah. But why do you think it's been so late and it's still sometimes it's delayed in coming?
You know why? Because it's a chicken egg thing, and it's actually a vicious circle. I think is because we make so low margins.
Yep.
We don't have the resources in time, people, and money to dedicate to improve our processes. And what we basically do, what a lot of companies do, is just we're firefighting every day, and we're extinguishing the same fires every day, instead of going to the core of it and stand still and look and say, I have an helicopter point of view, right? Helicopter view, and then improve the processes.
But isn't it a shame that more people, like-minded organisations, don't get together so that the resource and the funding isn't on one company and they share it for the good of?
That's impossible. I've tried that so many times. It's unfortunately so difficult.
But it's going to happen.
It has to happen. But you know what? We have a slogan, and I actually stole it from Jack Welch. He was the CEO of GE in the last century, and it says, "Change before you have to." We always put the traffic lights because there was an accident. We always improve our processes.
Bumps, whatever.
Yeah, we always improve our processes because a competitor is doing something better. We improve our quality because our customer is complaining.
Yeah.
Don't be proactive. Don't be reactive, right? And that's what we should do. That should be embedded in your company's culture.
Jack will be very proud of you.
Yeah.
He will. Yeah. Also his bell curve. Yeah. Now, what do you see in front of you now? So you're moving on. Anything? Are you got any preference? Have you got any ideas what you want to do?
Well, I think I'm open for a lot of because what I've learned since it came out in the news, right? It went public in March. There were certain people or companies that approached me on certain things that I would have never thought about, and if you would have asked the same question, I might have not said that. And then you think about it, you say, "Hey, maybe it's interesting." So, the worst thing you can do is say something and exclude, and then you come back and you say, "Oh, What I probably won't do is a similar job like I did right now. So working for a logistics or transport company, similar to Jan de Rijk. I wouldn't have quit this if I, to do something the same somewhere else.
Yeah.
Another thing is because a lot of people approach me for that is, for example, become a logistics or a supply chain director for a larger multinational or something. But who knows? Maybe with the right multinational it could be interesting as well. So, but that's not necessarily my preference. Aviation, I love aviation. I mean, I've spent 14 years in aviation between Cargolux and Aero Mexico. But now I actually I'm as a supplier for the aviation industry in TIACA, as advisor to certain companies in the advisory board. So I love the aviation. Aviation is very broad, and so I'm open for any suggestions. I let myself be surprised.
But you've got a transference of skills and an adaptability. I mean, I agree with you. And sometimes when a door opens, even if it's not right what you see when you go through, it leads you to so many other opportunities. So to be open-minded is good. Yeah. Wherever you go, you'll be an asset, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
What caused the change in style with the old?
With the beard. With the beard, it's like
gives you a different look.
Okay, that sounds.
I like it, but I would.
Sounds different. Sounds like a politically correct way. I don't like you.
No. I like it, but I would. But
no, it's after a holiday, you leave it, and then your wife and your daughters say, one my oldest daughter says you like it. My younger daughter says I look like a crook, but
the old Jason Statham look.
Exactly, but the majority likes it. So and then you get positive feedback. You get sometimes, but that's quite. I'm bald on the top of my head, so that's the only way I can change a little bit, right?
Yeah, but you're one of the guys who makes it look good, my friend. You make it look good.
Thank you.
Now, music. What would be the tune, the song that makes you get up no matter where you are? And I had dinner with you in Singapore, and you gave the lyrics of a lovely. I was absolutely moved by it. So would you be so kind as to give that again?
There's a couple of songs. Well, yeah, we talked about music. We also talked about a poem. Remember?
Yes.
There was a poem by Samuel Ullman. It's called Youth.
That's it.
And I love it because it says, it's written 100 years ago. No, the guy died even 100 years ago. So, but it's so true. He says, it's not. We don't grow old by the number of years or by wrinkles in our skin. We grow old by deserting our ideals. Years might wrinkle your skin, but to give up your ideals wrinkles your soul forever. And that's beautiful. And then, you have to read it because it's really beautiful. And then he ends and he says, I hope you die young at 80.
Yes.
And that's what you should. You should try to, don't be ridiculously young because some people try to be something that they're not. It should become a little bit natural, right? So
there's a few of them walking around here.
Don't. Let's not get into details on that. But no, music. I think we had it over. Led Zeppelin has a couple of beautiful songs. Going to California, standing on the heel of the mountains of dreams, telling myself it's not as hard as it seems. Billy Joel, I think we had Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Of the Piano Man.
That's the one.
That's the one. And
that's the one.
And the waitress is practicing politics
Yeah.
while the businessman slowly gets stoned. But we're all sharing a drink called loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. And that's how we spent a lot of our nights here together, I think, in the air cargo community.
But I love that.
Yeah.
I've got to look that up, so I'm going to learn that myself. I think that's absolutely superb.
Yeah.
Absolutely superb. Right, let me just see now, because I think we're almost at the end of the time. It's always enjoyable.
Likewise.
And if I was a betting man, I would put an awful lot of money on the fact that you're going to get a wonderful position and it's going to be very, very influential.
Thank you.
I would endorse you anytime, my friend.
Thanks. Really appreciate it.
The one that I put down for the book title would be Wind in My Hair, Wind on My Back, Work Hard, but always enjoy the crack.
No, that's very good.
That's what I would have for you.
Thanks.
It's an absolute pleasure. Seriously, thank you for coming on. Now, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do so?
LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the best way. Yeah, right. Yeah. The name stays the same.
The name stays the same. The banner and the colours are different.
Exactly.
And for anybody looking, we also had a little prop for Sebastiaan, but he chose not to do it. But
It's too hot.
I don't blame you.
It's too hot. Otherwise, I would have loved it.
I don't blame you.
But it's 30 degrees in Munich. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So
But seriously, thank you so much.
Oh,
Look
thank
forward
you.
to seeing you again. We'll keep
really
in touch.
appreciate it. I know we will.
And,
I will.
Lovely.
Thanks, man.